that does not exist, Wolf.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, as usual, thanks very much.
You got it, Wolf. Thank you.
More perspective now, because what happened to this individual raises all kinds of questions about the system for screening pilots and prospective pilots around the world, especially right here at home. Dr. Drew Pinsky is joining us. He's the host of Dr. Drew on Call on HLN. Also joining us, the FAA's former person in charge of medical certification, Dr. Warren Silberman, and joining us as well, the aviation attorney and pilot, Justin Green. Dr. Silberman, one of the struggles with the screening process for pilots is that it's largely an honor system. It's up to the pilots to report problems with their health that might affect their ability to fly. What has the FAA done to try to address this?
Well, basically, what they've done is, first of all, at every course, when an AME, when an aviation medical examiner begins their training, they get several hours worth of psychological training in aviation medicine, training in drugs and alcohol, and then they also have to have regular updated training, and there's psychological psych training with that too. Wolf, it's basically a Gestalt type thing. There are questions on the exam, and the pilots got to be truthful about that. And it's just how the doctor feels. There isn't any specific psychological testing.
Yeah, they got to fix that, I'm sure. Justin, you were saying earlier today that gatekeeping, finding an applicant with illnesses like this co-pilot, keeping him from ever getting into the cockpit, that's the most important part of the screening process. Explain what you mean.
Well, I think there's a couple of issues. One is, as we just heard, is that there's a big difference between some minor depression that can be treated and monitored by the flight surgeon, by the flight examiner, and what apparently this young man had. This young man, had some very serious issues, some issues that probably would have precluded him from getting a license if it was found out. And from what we've heard so far, this young man was very good at hiding what he had. And we haven't heard what, if anything, the airline knew about why he took that hiatus from training. We don't know what, if anything, they knew, and apparently they're saying they didn't know what they knew about his treatment. So I think in this case, Reagan said, trust but verify. Here, if you have someone coming from the street, this man had no real history, you really can't take him at his word. And I don't think that a flight medical examiner who is only going to be with a young person just a few minutes is going to be able to really pick up on something like this.
They got to fix this so-called honor system where you trust, but you don't necessarily even verify. Dr. Drew, for someone who knows they have a psychological condition, in this co-pilot's case, those issues seem to have been very serious, even if they might have been temporary. How hard is it to hide all of this from a doctor if the doctor is even looking for it?
It's hard, but in Germany they have some of the most stringent medical privacy laws in the world. So even if those doctors, we may yet find out that they knew about it but had no legal authority to say anything other than give them that "you are not fit to work" little slip, and then the individual has to then give that to their employer. That's the way it works in Germany. Let's remember, Americans are going to fly overseas. We have to watch our safety over there. It's not just our domestic flights we have to be concerned with. But this is a very serious issue. Sanjay was absolutely right. We need to stop thinking about this as psychological. This was a brain disorder. This was a psychiatric problem in which this guy was psychotic, receiving huge, very serious medications. And indeed, it may have caused the blurry vision, but it can also, this condition he had, he might have been avoiding the medication, and he might have started thinking he was actually doing the right thing in terms of crashing this plane. When in a psychotic state, things are terribly disorganized, and what is usually sane thinking becomes terribly distorted, and that's how a tragedy like this can occur.
That's a good point, Dr. Silberman. What can doctors do if they know their patient is a pilot, for example, they suspect he or she has a condition that could affect their ability to fly? What's the doctor supposed to do?
Okay, well, obviously, if the doctor directly thinks that the pilot may actually do harm, they can pick up the phone and call the FAA. The FAA also has an FAA hotline. It's FAA hotline at FAA.gov, or a phone number, 1-800-255-1111, and when any complaint that a person, even a regular non-physician makes to the hotline is evaluated, and it's normally kept anonymous.
Justin, what about the relatively new regulation that allows some pilots who are being treated for depression to fly? How has that worked out, and how has that helped, if it has?
I think it actually has helped, because the one thing you're going to have depressed pilots. Pilots are just like everybody else. They get old, they develop medical conditions, they develop stressors in their lives that might lead to depression, and they're going to be depressed. The question you have is, are you going to have a system that enables them to come forward, get treatment, be monitored, be safe, or are you going to have a system where they are basically every incentive is to hide? So this opening up, reaching out to pilots, getting them treatment, getting them monitored is very positive in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Dr. Drew, the stigma surrounding mental health, that's a huge, huge problem, not just among pilots,
Yeah.
but a lot of other people in high-risk jobs, but in all sorts of businesses as well. How much does fear of being ostracized keep people from actually seeking
Tremendous.
treatment?
It's tremendous, and one of my fears about this story is that it's going to further stigmatize people, and I think the FAA has done a great job of allowing people to be humans and to have conditions that are treatable, get them properly treated, and then get them back into their job. But there are conditions that are just not okay, and the problem, I think really the problem here is that the medical privacy has trumped the safety of the passengers in this plane, because the doctor in Germany couldn't pick up the phone and make the calls that we can make here.
Good point indeed. All right, Dr. Drew Pinsky, Dr. Warren Silberman, Justin Green, guys, thanks very much. Just ahead.